The dark silhouette slid into the tent, knife clutched in trembling hands. A twig snapped underfoot. Karen froze as the alarm blared, her eyes wide with panic. Josh jolted awake, his heart pounding. Had she really come to kill him this time? Josh's eyes flew open as the piercing alarm shattered the stillness of the night. Adrenaline surging, he instinctively reached for the baseball bat he kept by his sleeping bag. The tent flap rustled, and a dark figure materialized in the dim glow of the emergency light. "Karen?" Josh gasped, squinting against the blinding glare. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen's eyes were wild, the knife in her hand trembling. I had to stop you. I couldn't let you do this to me again." Josh's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. Just hours earlier, he and Karen had shared a quiet campfire, reminiscing about better times. Now she had somehow breached the perimeter of his remote campsite, slipping past his security measures. And she was armed. "Karen, calm down," he said, keeping his voice low and even. "Whatever's going on, we can talk about it." He slowly inched his hand closer to the bat, ready to defend himself if necessary. "No more talking." Karen's voice cracked with desperation. "You've taken everything from me. I won't let you do it again." The piercing wail of the alarm seemed to heighten the tension in the small space. Josh's heart pounded in his ears as he tried to reason with the woman he once loved. "Karen, please, put the knife down. Whatever's happened, we can figure this out." He cursed himself for not being more vigilant, for letting his guard down around her. Now, he might pay the ultimate price. Karen shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's too late for that. You have to pay for what you've done." The sound of approaching sirens in the distance only seemed to further agitate her. Josh knew he had to act quickly before the situation spiraled out of control. "Karen, listen to me," he said, his voice trembling. "If the police get here, they're going to arrest you. Is that what you want?" Karen hesitated, the knife wavering in her grip. Josh sensed an opening and seized the opportunity. "Give me the knife, Karen. Let's talk this through. Maybe there's a way we can fix this together." The tension in the tent was palpable as the two former lovers faced off, the future hanging in the balance. Josh's life depended on his ability to defuse the situation and reach the woman he once knew. But had Karen truly come here to kill them? And if so, what had driven her to the brink of such a desperate act? The sirens drew closer, their wail cutting through the stillness of the night. Karen's eyes darted towards the sound, the knife wavering in her grip. Josh saw his chance and slowly reached for the baseball bat, his fingers closing around the worn handle. "Karen, please," he pleaded, keeping his voice low and even. "Don't do this. Let's talk it out." Karen's gaze snapped back to him, her expression hardening. "Talk? After everything you've done?" She let out a mirthless laugh. "It's too late for that." Josh tightened his grip on the bat, his muscles tensing. "I don't know what you think I've done, but I swear I never meant to hurt you. Whatever happened, we can fix it." Karen shook her head, the knife raised in a trembling hand. "No, Josh. There's no fixing this. You took everything from me, my home, my livelihood, my life. And now, you have to pay." The sirens were deafeningly close now, the flashing lights visible through the thin fabric of the tent. Josh knew he had mere seconds to act. "Karen, don't do this," he pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. "Think about what you're doing. If you hurt me, or the police, you'll only end up in jail. Is that what you want?" Karen hesitated, her resolve wavering. Josh seized the opportunity, swinging the bat with all his might. The metal collided with Karen's wrist with a sickening crack, and the knife clattered to the ground. Karen let out a piercing scream, clutching her injured limb. Josh scrambled to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to get out of the tent, had to get to safety. But as he glanced back at Karen, curled on the ground in agony, a pang of guilt twisted in his gut. Whatever had led them to this moment, he never wanted it to end this way. But with the police closing in and Karen's sanity hanging by a thread, he knew he had no choice. Gritting his teeth, Josh ducked out of the tent and ran towards the tree line, praying he could outrun the impending sirens and the demons of his past. The thundering footsteps faded into the distance as Josh plunged deeper into the dense forest, branches and undergrowth tearing at his skin. His lungs burned, his heart pounding in his ears, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Not when the cops were closing in and Karen. Josh grimaced, the memory of her anguished scream searing his mind. He had never meant to hurt her, never wanted it to come to this. But in that moment, with the knife poised to strike, he'd had no choice. Stumbling over a fallen log, Josh pushed on, weaving through the shadowy trees. He had to put as much distance between himself and the campsite as possible. If the police found him, all the carefully constructed lies he built his life upon would come crashing down. Branches whipped at his face as he ran, but he hardly felt the sting. All he could think about was getting away, escaping the consequences of his past. The familiar panic began to claw at his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "No, not now," he muttered, forcing himself to slow his pace. He couldn't afford to let the fear consume him, not when his freedom hung in the balance. Glancing back over his shoulder, Josh caught a glimpse of flashing red and blue lights through the trees. His heart lurched. They were closing in. With a burst of renewed energy, he pushed onward, his legs burning with the effort. As he ran, Josh's mind raced, replaying the events that had led him to this moment. How had everything fallen apart so spectacularly? One moment, he and Karen had been planning a peaceful camping trip, reveling in the nostalgia of their relationship. The next, she had turned on him, a knife in her hand and murder in her eyes. What had happened in the intervening years to twist the woman he loved into this vengeful, desperate creature? And how had he never seen it coming? The trees began to thin, and Josh caught sight of a small dirt road up ahead. Without hesitation, he veered towards it, praying he could flag down a passing car and make his escape. Anything was better than facing the police and the consequences of his past. As he burst onto the road, Josh heard the distant wail of sirens drawing nearer. Panic gripped him, and he frantically scanned the empty asphalt, searching for any sign of salvation. Then, in the distance, a pair of headlights appeared, growing larger with each passing second. Josh steeled himself, his hand raised to flag down the approaching vehicle. This was his only chance. He couldn't afford to fail. The car's headlights grew brighter, the rumble of the engine cutting through the night. Josh waved his arms frantically, desperate to catch the driver's attention. "Stop. Please, stop," he shouted, his voice hoarse and panicked. The car began to slow, and Josh caught a glimpse of the driver's face through the windshield. His heart sank. It was an elderly couple, their faces etched with concern. "What's wrong, son?" the man called out, leaning over the steering wheel. Josh rushed to the car, his words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "Please, you have to help me. The police are after me, and I need to get out of here." The couple exchanged a worried glance. "The police? What's going on?" the woman asked. Josh's mind raced, trying to come up with a plausible story that wouldn't implicate him. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said, eyes darting nervously towards the direction of the approaching sirens. "Please, you have to help me. I can't go back there." The man's brow furrowed, but he seemed to sense the urgency in Josh's voice. "All right, son, get in. We'll see what we can do." Relief flitted through Josh as he yanked open the car door and slid into the back seat. The elderly couple exchanged a wary look, but to Josh's immense gratitude, they didn't press him for more details. As the car lurched forward, Josh sank back into the worn leather, his heart still pounding. He couldn't believe his luck. These kind strangers had unwittingly become his ticket to freedom. But the reprieve was fleeting, and he knew he couldn't hide forever. The sirens grew louder, the flashing lights drawing ever closer. Josh's hands trembled as he stared out the rear window, willing the car to go faster. If the police caught up to them, there would be no escaping the consequences of his past. "Son, what's really going on here?" the man asked, his voice laced with concern. "If you're in some kind of trouble, we need to know." Josh swallowed hard, his throat tight. I can't go back there," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, you have to help me." The couple exchanged another worried glance, but to Josh's relief, they didn't slow the car. As the flashing lights receded in the distance, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could outrun the demons that had been chasing him for so long. But deep down, he knew the truth. His past had finally caught up to him, and there was nowhere left to hide. The car rumbled down the dark country road, the elderly couple glancing nervously at Josh in the rearview mirror. The sirens had faded into the distance, but the palpable tension in the car remained. "Son, I think it's time you told us what's really going on," the man said, his voice firm but laced with concern. Josh swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had to tread carefully. One wrong word, one slip-up, and these kind strangers could turn him in. But the alternative, going back to face the police and the consequences of his past, was unthinkable. Josh's voice trailed off, his gaze fixed on the passing scenery. "I can't go back there. You have to understand, it's not that simple." The woman twisted in her seat, her eyes searching his face. "What did you do, son? Are you in some kind of trouble with the law?" Josh shook his head, his hands clenching into fists in his lap. "It's not like that. I didn't do anything wrong, not really. It's just..." He let out a shaky breath, the weight of his words pressing down on him. "It's complicated." The couple exchanged a worried look, the car slowing as they turned onto a dirt road. Josh's heart raced. Were they taking him somewhere to hand him over to the authorities? "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just need a little more time. I can't go back there. Not yet." The man glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his expression thoughtful. "Son, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but we can't just help you run from the law. That wouldn't be right." Josh felt his heart sink, the last glimmer of hope slipping away. "I understand," he murmured, resigned. "Just, please, can you at least drop me off somewhere? Somewhere I can figure out what to do next." The car rumbled on, the silence thick and uncomfortable. Josh stared out the window, watching the trees blur past. He had to find a way out of this, a way to escape the past that was rapidly catching up to him. As the car pulled onto a gravel driveway, Josh's heart raced. Was this it, the end of the line? He braced himself for the inevitable confrontation with the police, his mind spinning with possibilities, each one more desperate than the last. But as the car came to a stop, the elderly man turned to face him, a compassionate look in his eyes. "Son, I can't in good conscience turn you over to the authorities without knowing the full story. But I also can't have you running from the law on my conscience." He paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "How about this? You come stay with us for the night, and in the morning, we can figure out the best way forward. No judgment, just a safe place to rest and think things through." Josh felt a surge of relief and gratitude wash over him. These strangers, these kind-hearted souls, were offering him a lifeline when he needed it most. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to set things right. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to repay you for this." The woman reached back, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. "Just tell us the truth, son. That's all we ask." As Josh followed the couple into their humble farmhouse, he knew he was running out of time. But for now, he had a chance to catch his breath and confront the demons of his past. And that was all he could hope for. The farmhouse was warm and cozy, a stark contrast to the chill of the night air outside. Josh followed the elderly couple through the front door, his senses assaulted by the comforting smells of freshly baked bread and wood smoke. Make yourself at home, son, the man said, gesturing to a worn but well-loved armchair by the fireplace. I'm John, and this is my wife, Mary. Can I get you some coffee or tea? Josh sank into the cushions, his wearied body finally relaxing. Coffee would be wonderful. Thank you, he murmured, his gaze darting around the room. As Mary bustled off to the kitchen, John settled into the chair across from Josh, his expression one of gentle concern. Now, why don't you start from the beginning and tell us what's going on? He said, his voice calm and reassuring. Josh took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. He owed these kind strangers the truth, even if it meant risking everything. It all started years ago, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I was in a bad place, financially and emotionally. My relationship with Karen was falling apart, and I made some decisions that I'm not proud of. John nodded, his eyes never leaving Josh's face. Go on. I started taking money from our joint accounts, just small amounts at first. I told myself it was just a loan, that I'd pay it back. But it spiraled out of control, and before I knew it, I had drained our savings. Josh's hands trembled as he recounted the events. Karen found out, and she was devastated. We fought constantly, and eventually she left. Mary reappeared with a steaming mug of coffee, offering it to Josh with a sympathetic smile. He accepted it gratefully, taking a sip of the rich, aromatic brew. I tried to make it right, to pay her back, Josh continued, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the fireplace. But the damage was done. Karen lost everything. Our home, our business, everything we'd built together. John leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And that's why she came after you tonight, to get revenge. Josh nodded, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. I've been living off the grid, trying to hide from the past. But Karen, she never stopped looking for me. And tonight, his voice trailed off, the memory of the knife in her hand sending a shiver down his spine. You had no choice but to defend yourself, Mary said softly, her hand resting on his arm. Josh shook his head, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. I never wanted it to come to that. I loved her, once. I still do, in a way. But what I did, it was unforgivable. The room fell silent, save for the crackle of the fire. John and Mary exchanged a loaded glance, their expressions a mix of sympathy and concern. Son, I can't say I understand the full weight of what you've been through, John said, his voice low and grave. But I can see the burden you've been carrying, and I think I know a thing or two about second chances. Josh looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. What are you saying? John leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful smile spreading across his face. Well, I reckon you and Karen could both use a little mercy right about now. And if you're willing to make things right, we might just be able to help you do that. As Josh listened, a spark of determination ignited within him. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to finally put the past to rest and find the redemption he so desperately craved. The morning sun streamed through the farmhouse windows, casting a warm glow over the modest living room. Josh sat across from John and Mary, a steaming mug of coffee cradled in his hands, his mind racing with the weight of the previous night's events. So, what do you think, son? John asked, his voice gentle but firm. Are you ready to make things right? Josh took a deep breath, his grip tightening on the mug. I don't know. After everything that's happened, I'm not sure there's a way to fix this. Mary reached across the coffee table, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. We believe there is. You've carried this burden long enough. It's time to face it head on. Josh's gaze flickered to the window, his thoughts drifting to Karen, alone and injured in the woods. The memory of her anguished scream still haunted him, the guilt gnawing at his conscience. But what if she won't listen? He murmured, his voice laced with desperation. What if she's too far gone? John leaned forward, his expression earnest. Son, You won't know until you try. And from what you've told us, that woman is still in there, the one you loved. She's hurting, but she's not beyond reach." Josh nodded slowly, the weight of John's words settling over him. He knew he couldn't run anymore, not after everything that had happened. It was time to confront the past, to make amends, and find a way to heal the wounds he had inflicted. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "I'll do it. I'll go back and find Karen, try to make things right." A small smile tugged at the corners of Mary's lips. "That's our boy. We'll be right here, waiting to help in any way we can." Josh stood, his resolve hardening with each passing moment. "Thank you, both of you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this." John waved a dismissive hand. "No need for that, son. Just go, do what you have to do, and know that we're in your corner, no matter what." With a deep breath, Josh headed for the door, his heart pounding with a mix of trepidation and determination. Whatever awaited him in the woods, he was ready to face it head-on. He owed it to Karen, to himself, and to the kindness of these strangers who had offered him a lifeline. As he stepped out into the morning light, Josh knew that the path ahead would not be an easy one. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could find a way to redeem himself and heal the wounds of the past. The forest was deceptively peaceful in the morning light, the birds chirping sweetly as Josh retraced his steps back towards the campsite. With each passing minute, his apprehension grew, the memory of Karen's distraught face and the glint of the knife steered into his mind. As he approached the familiar clearing, Josh's heart raced. The campsite was deserted, save for the flattened grass and the shattered remnants of the alarm system he had so carefully constructed. Steeling himself, he ventured forward, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of Karen. A faint rustling in the distance caught his attention, and he cautiously made his way towards the sound. There, curled against the base of a tree, was Karen, her wrist cradled protectively against her chest. "Karen?" Josh called out, his voice tentative. Karen's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing with a mix of fear and defiance. "Stay back," she croaked, her voice hoarse from crying. Josh raised his hands in a placating gesture, slowly lowering himself to the ground. "I'm not here to hurt you, Karen. I just want to talk." Karen eyed him warily, her good hand gripping the tree trunk for support. "Talk? After everything you've done, you think I'm going to listen to you?" "Please, Karen," Josh said, his voice laced with desperation. "I know I've made mistakes, terrible ones. But I want to make things right, to try and make amends." Karen let out a bitter laugh, wincing as the movement jostled her injured wrist. "Make amends? It's a little late for that, don't you think?" Josh inched closer, his gaze never leaving her face. "I'm so sorry, Karen. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was in a dark place, and I made some very poor choices. But I've spent years trying to make it right, to atone for what I've done." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Atone? How could you possibly make up for what you've done to me? You took everything, Josh. Everything." Josh nodded, his own eyes brimming with tears. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But please, let me start by getting you medical attention. Your wrist needs to be treated." Karen stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Josh thought he saw a flicker of the woman he had once loved, the one who had shared his dreams and his life. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a hardened mask of bitterness and betrayal. "And why should I trust you?" she spat. "After what you've done, how can I ever believe a single word that comes out of your mouth?" Josh hesitated, the weight of his past misdeeds pressing down on him. "Because I'm asking you to, Karen. I'm asking you to let me try to make this right, to try and heal the wounds I've caused. I know it won't be easy, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I have to try." The forest fell silent, save for the distant chirping of birds. Karen's gaze never wavered, her expression a mix of warring emotions. Then, slowly, she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "All right, Josh," she murmured. "But don't think for a second that this changes anything. I'm only doing this because I can't afford to let this risk get any worse." Josh felt a surge of relief wash over him, tempered by the knowledge that the road ahead would be long and arduous. But in that moment, he knew that he had to seize this chance, this glimmer of hope, and do whatever it took to right the wrongs of the past. With a deep breath, he moved to Karen's side, offering his hand to help her to her feet. The journey to redemption would not be an easy one, but for the first time in years, Josh felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, he was determined to face it head-on, and to finally find the peace he had been searching for.